Small businesses here in Alaska could soon be shelling out more money for their employer-funded health care packages. That's unless lawmakers vote to delay the health insurance tax before the beginning of next year.
Channel 2 News' Jack Carney spoke with one business in Anchorage today. And Jack, they told you that this previously delayed provision could cost them big time.
That's exactly right, Mike and Rebecca. The health insurance tax, otherwise known as HIT, was originally part of the Affordable Care Act. However, in previous years, congressmen and senators have voted to delay this agreement. Now, with less than 2 weeks left before the new year, lawmakers are running out of time to delay, and businesses are worried that they'll soon feel a financial strain. Meet Procom supply manager Dennis Natick.
I've been working here for about 3 years now. In the past 3 years, I have grown in my position. I started out part-time here, and now I am full-time running the supply department. I do have insurance for myself that the company provides me. Right now, that does not cost me anything. The company pays the full premium on that.
Just lay it on the table.
But if lawmakers don't vote to approve or delay on the health insurance tax, that could change very quickly for businesses like Procom Alaska.
If they don't act, it goes into effect this year, January 1, which will be anywhere from 3 to 6% in addition to the increased costs. So this was what our premiums were before the Affordable Care Act passed. $571 a month for the employee, $700 for their families. So it was a total of $1,300 a month, or $16,000 a year.
Today, Peter shows me that number has more than doubled.
So $1,072 a month in employee costs and $1,980 additionally for their families. That's a total of $3,000 a month. That's $36,000 a year. That's anywhere from another $1,000 to $2,100 a year. It actually puts pressure on me to actually not grow. No, don't hire new people. Don't increase benefits. Don't increase paid time off. Don't increase salaries. Where's that money going to come from?
It could come from funds that would usually go towards employees.
Knowing that that bonus could be going away, that is upsetting and disappointing because all your hard work will now go towards a premium that does not provide anything for you than what you already have.
My choices are this. I pass it on to my employees or I pass it on to my customers.
A choice Peter's hopes can be delayed again for at least one more year. Mike and Rebecca, no one's been able to tell me exactly why lawmakers in D.C. will not vote for another delay this time around. However, one business federation has estimated that if a delay is not approved, that between 150 to 300,000 jobs in the private sector could be lost by 2023. Reporting in Anchorage, Jack Carney, Channel 2 News.
A $1 billion consolidation deal between Anchorage's city-owned electric utility and an electric co-op may be decided by voters next April.
Channel 2's Jack Carney has more on the proposed sale of municipal light and power to Chugach Electric. And Jack, the state leaders and the people at Chugach say this deal won't result in bigger bills for consumers.
That's exactly right, Rebecca. Many thought that the two entities would be announcing a merger today, after a recommendation to do so by the Economic Development Board of Anchorage. Now, we know it's residents right here in Anchorage who will decide whether this deal is one that works for them. And the light turns on. However, if you live in Anchorage, the energy powering that bulb could soon come from another source.
We're here for it is a momentous occasion. For many decades, we have looked for ways to join the forces of ML&P and Chugach, and that's what we're here to announce today. We have come to a point where we want to put a ballot proposition with the assistance of the Assembly on the April ballot, asking the people of Anchorage for permission to sell ML&P to Chugach.
Through a vote, Anchorage city leaders are proposing a $1 billion acquisition deal of MLP plants like the kind behind me to Chugach Electric, in a deal that company representatives say is good for their employees and city leaders say is good for all of Anchorage. Here's how the deal would work. Up front, Chugach would pay off both ML&P's debt of $542 million plus ML&P's equity of $170 million. Then, annual acquisition payments of over $170 million over 30 years, and payments in lieu of taxes of $142 million over that same time, for a grand total of $1,024,400,000. A lot of money, but according to Chugach CEO Lee Fiebert, one that won't result in paying more for your electricity.
We knew that for this conversation to be successful, we needed three things. We need to make sure that rates do not go up. We need to make sure that the workers at MLMP are protected and at Chugach. And we need to make sure that the municipality gets a revenue stream that continues to provide the services that we all need in this community together.
But is there a risk that what is being promised could turn out to be the opposite? Not according to Mayor Berkowitz.
You know, risk is a really interesting question. I mean, I tend to think that there's more risk in standing still and hoping things change. The more we can stimulate business, the more we can insulate ourselves, the more we can have control of our own fate, I think the stronger off we're going to be. So the risk here, it wasn't doing nothing. The opportunity is in doing something.
Now city leaders await the voice of the people, and they're hoping Anchorage will give them the green light for a go. So Mike and Rebecca, here's the timeline, and try to stay with me because it gets a little bit complicated. So the city elections happen on April 3rd. If approved, it would take another 60 days, according to Chugach and Mayor Berkowitz, before both entities could agree to the terms of the deal. After that, the Alaska Regulatory Commission would probably take about another month before they approve it, if they approve it. And then it would take another 6 months before the full consolidation would go into effect, which would mean that we're looking at somewhere around January 2019 before this deal really is done, if it is approved by Anchorage voters. Jack Carney, Channel 2 News.
And Jack spent most of the afternoon memorizing all those steps. Way to go, Jack. Very good. All right. Jack Carney reporting tonight. Well, the snow came just in time for a big competition that's returned to Alaska.
Skiers from around the country have brought their gear and their wallets to spend money for this year's U.S. Nationals cross-country ski championships happening here in Anchorage.
Channel 2's Jack Carney was at Kincaid Park today with competitors and spectators. And earlier today, he joins us now live in downtown Anchorage. And Jack, this big national event is estimated to make a big local impact, right?
That's exactly right, Mike and Rebecca. And it starts with filling up hotels with rooms like the kind behind me. And it's not just people spending money on hotels, but also restaurants, bars, sports shops, and they're taking that outside money and spending it right here inside Anchorage.
Some pretty challenging conditions, but we're able to take care of it.
Matt Pauley is chief of competition for the 2018 United States Cross Country Ski Championships happening right here at Kincaid Park in Anchorage.
I think the economic impact was figured to be about $1 million for the week or so. You know, food, lodging, car rentals.
Now, before it started snowing last night and into this morning, organizers were worried that there might not be enough white stuff on the ground, so they'd actually been using machines like the kind behind me to create snow in hopes that there'd be enough for racers on this course.
Go on to start, and we've got Gracie Shanley from Ski and Snowboard from the Vale.
It took 2 weeks and nearly 4 million gallons of water to create the right conditions for these athletes.
It kind of helps my dream of being a skier kind of keep on going. Like, I can see that it's possible.
Yeah, no, it's an amazing opportunity to get to have this up in our city.
Jeff Wright is a youth cross-country coach for the local Nordic Association here in Anchorage.
Having events up here is part of what keeps this going generation after generation. Just again, having the kids be out here and have an opportunity to see this, have an opportunity to be able to meet athletes from all over the country who come in for this.
And keep Anchorage a top spot in the U.S. for cross-country skiing and draw in more outsiders even after the competition is over. So between now and next Tuesday, officials estimate that there will be between $850,000 to $950,000 spent by skiers and spectators alike right here in Anchorage. A huge economic impact. Mike and Rebecca.
All right, Jack Carney reporting tonight. Thanks, Jack.
Well, it's testing time for a high-tech bus covering some Anchorage routes.
Jack Carney joins us now to tell us about the city's first fuelless bus.
That's exactly right, Rebecca and Maria. And this electric American-made bus will be picking up passengers right here in Anchorage in the very near future.
The battery on board now, we would expect about 180 miles. That's going to fluctuate, obviously, how long we're running the heaters.
This could be the sound or silence of Anchorage's transportation future.
It's on right now.
Yes, sir.
I wasn't sure whether it was the bus or the cameras.
Yeah. It's quiet, that's for sure.
Inside of the bus, Proterra's Mike Segvich shows me how it works.
We're going to turn the master switch to the on position. Wait a few seconds for the systems to begin booting up. Press the green start button. My dashboard's indicating that the system is starting. Yeah, 115 is what it says now, and that's kind of a real-time readout, so that'll change as we're driving. It'll increase or decrease.
The good thing is that the stability in the electric utility rate market is incredible because it's leveraged and hedged by so many different things that it remains relatively stable. Meanwhile, diesel prices and gas prices and even CNG prices now have fluctuated dramatically in ways that you just won't see with the electric market.
There's a good argument to be made that because there are fewer moving parts in an electric vehicle, there are fewer parts to break and less maintenance that's required. And this is one of the things we hope to discover.
Around 11, people begin to board. Doors roll up, and the bus rolls out on the Anchorage streets for the very first time. Segvich is able to monitor all aspects of the bus's power and operation on his computer, and up front, it's pretty silent.
For the diesel, now, if Mike who's our driver right now, if he was driving a diesel bus, he could not hear any portion of the conversation we're having on the back end. That's how noisy those buses are. The noisiest portion of this bus is probably the HVAC unit or the steering pump that's right below where Mike's sitting.
Transportation Director Abul Hassan says this first test drive is a prime opportunity to see how these battery-powered buses would last in Anchorage's cold climate. And if the run is successful and the city were to purchase more of these units?
Because we are federally funded, 80 to 90% of our capital investment is federally funded. So if we bought $1 million bus, hypothetically, $900,000, up to $900,000 would be coming from the FTA. The local investment is $100,000, which I would say is an immensely cost-conscientious way of being able to do an investment. You can't beat those odds.
The bus will begin serving routes for the general public starting Tuesday, January 16th, 2018, for a 4-month trial period. Now, while the electric bus is more expensive to purchase, officials point out that these buses require less maintenance because they run on electricity, a resource whose price is much more stable than that of gas or diesel.
All right, thanks so much, Jack.
Well, the state is spending more than it's taking in. Some economists worry that the state could be in for an even bigger budget crisis by next year if the finances aren't fixed.
Channel 2's Jack Carney joins us. And Jack, many lawmakers agree that action needs to be taken, but they don't agree on how or what that will look like.
Mike and Rebecca are exactly right. Alaska could be billions in debt if lawmakers in Juneau don't figure out a solution to replace the money that's been slowly fading from the state's Constitutional Reserve Fund. Alaska lawmakers are having a hard time filling up the gap left by decreases in oil revenues. The state is looking at a $2.5 billion deficit.
Gee, I'm used to the reporter coming to the cameraman. I am an economist by training, and I've spent a fair bit of time in the last year since I've been here understanding the state budget and explaining it.
Ralph Townsend is director for the University of Alaska Anchorage at the Institute of Social and Economic Research.
It was always anticipated that probably the permanent fund earnings, not the principal, the earnings, would eventually be used to offset the decline in oil revenues. And we're essentially at the point where we have to make the decision about, is now the time to start spending from the permanent fund, and if so, how we go about doing it. So the idea of using the earnings from the permanent fund to balance the budget, it seems to me, is not something that is a big issue for those people in Juneau. What is an issue is how to sell it to the people of Alaska.
Can I have you show me what this is?
Sure. So what this is a visual representation of the state budget. And each block that we're going to see is $100 million. We have to balance out what we have for revenues with what we're spending. If you think about it, what's going to happen at the end of the year, we're going to sweep all of this off. We spent it, right? And then it's going to get, more is going to come in. About the same amount is going to come in tax revenues. About the same amount is going to come in oil revenues. And so what we'll need to do is to find a way to replace the $2.4 billion that we've spent. We need this whole stack to close the gap. Yeah. And the governor says that's a bad idea. We want to leave some of the constitutional budget reserve. And specifically, he's proposing, let's take $500 million, and you can see that $500 million doesn't come close to balancing what we need. And so he's saying, let's take another $2 billion, and $2 billion would be 20 of these gold blocks. So the way we would balance the budget this year is by taking $500 million from the constitutional budget reserve and then starting to draw. And again, taking these gold blocks, this draw from the earnings reserve, is what's new.
Overall, Townsend says the state has 4 options with how to deal with that projected deficit. They could get rid of the dividend fund to help pay for the deficit, make cuts to government spending and programs, implement a new tax, something maybe like an income tax or sales tax is most likely according to Townsend, or they could go through with the governor's proposal of pulling money from the permanent fund earnings to offset future shortfalls.
All right, thanks for the demonstration, Jack. Well, we are living in a digital age, and while the bookstore business isn't necessarily booming as it once did, it's also not bombing.
Especially here in Anchorage, where as Channel 2's Jack Carney tells us, there is a community calling for some good composition.
A lot of people speak in generalities about the book industry these days, that it's been declining, that people don't read anymore, kids are on phones and can't get their head out of the screen, but that's not entirely true. In the community of Spenard, there's a new business brewing.
Independent bookstores have always been known for their community gathering and engagement elements.
Burrid Mars is one of the 4 Writer's Block bookstore and cafe owners.
All right, enjoy. Thank you. This has been a community project the entire time we've been trying to bring this up. Largely community funded, community built, community engaged from the ground up. And so I think that's a lot of what makes it relevant, is listening to and responding to the community around us. People still do read, and they still love literature, and they love discovering new writers and new authors.
I think anytime a bookstore opens in a community, that's a good thing. I'm Angela Lieball, business owner of Tidal Wave Books. Because we're a used bookstore, we don't have the event space to hold author signings and events, and so I think that's what makes the idea of the Writer's Block opening up a needed niche in Anchorage. We've got regular customers that come 2-3 times a week, combing the shelves for that, certain item that they're looking for, but also, it could be the latest Dan Brown that just came out. Rather than paying full price, $35, they'll find it here for $9.95.
You don't have to actually pay any cash currency to pick up a book. In fact, you can use sites like littlefreelibrary.org, which allow you to go in, enter your zip code, and then we'll show you a map like the kind you see right here, displaying exchanges in and around the Anchorage area. They look something like this. So I'm here at the intersection of I and 10th in Anchorage, and this is the Stars Free Library Exchange. So even in this digital age, if you're stuck without a tablet, smartphone, or some sort of other digital device, you can rely on these little free libraries if you have a need to read. Now, according to the Census Bureau and the latest statistics, book sales in November were down by just over 6% since the year before. But Alaska, as we know, is unique, especially for those of us who have chosen up to live here. We're a little different than our neighbors in the lower 48. And if you look at that same national data, March through May saw a 3-month surge in sales. So there is fluctuation in the market nationally. And here locally, there's a big enough demand and base for the book business.
Very cool. Thanks a lot.